Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us on FCT Brief. Now, this morning, we are turning our attention to the power sector with a focus on managing Nigeria's fragile transmission network, a critical link in the country's electricity supply chain. Nigeria's power sector has long been plagued by inefficiencies, with transmission remaining a major bottleneck despite reforms in generation and distribution. Experts say the national grid managed by the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, suffers from frequent collapses, outdated infrastructure, and poor investments, leaving millions of citizens in the dark. To address these challenges, the federal government is intensifying reforms aimed at strengthening the grid.
Plans include modernizing transmission lines, expanding substations, and deploying smart technologies to improve monitoring and control. Industry stakeholders emphasize that without a reliable transmission backbone, efforts in generation and distribution will continue to fall short. They are calling for better funding, public-private partnerships, and strict regulatory oversight to ensure efficiency. As Nigeria strives to boost power supply for homes and industries, managing the transmission network remains a priority. Analysts believe that sustained reforms in this sector could be the game changer for the nation's energy future. Dr. Usman Gur Mohammed is the former MD CEO Transmission Company of Nigeria. He's also the former chairman of WAP and also the WAP Executive Board, and he's also the founder of Power Policy Dialogue Platform. He joins us live in the studio. It's good to have you in our studio this morning.
Thank you, Tijesu and Imodu.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm happy to be here, and thank you, viewers.
Yeah, happy to have you. Now, let's take a look at the power sector and, challenges confronting the power sector. You were once at the helm of affairs, and Nigeria's power grid has collapsed only twice this year. That's a sharp contrast from the past. But what would you say would end this cycle entirely? Would you say that we need a complete overhaul of the grid system, or would you say that a proper maintenance is what we need at the moment?
Thank you very much. The government embarked on the power sector reform, I think, by the government of General Olusegun Obasanjo, I think in 2001 or 2002. And the objective of the power sector reform is to ensure that there's sustainable investment into the power sector, meaning government investment in the power sector has not been sustainable in the past. Therefore, government wanted private sector intervention into the power sector. That was what informed the power sector reform. Unfortunately, today we are about 13 or 14 years after, and yet government is still the biggest investor in the power sector. So that tells something. It means that the reform is not working or has not worked the way it's supposed to be. Now, as part of the reform, the Transmission Company of Nigeria was supposed to be the only sector among the three subsectors, meaning generation and distribution and transmission, that is held by government. And this has history. It's not only Nigeria. In all over the world, there are key countries that are similar to Nigeria. Their transmission are actually still held by government. If you look at South Africa, despite all the reform they did, or India, despite all the reform they did, or Egypt, even Cote d'Ivoire, countries that are similar to Nigeria, all these countries, their transmission are actually 100% owned by government. Even India, that has more than 350 gigawatts of power generated and transmitted, is still 100% owned by government. So the decision to keep transmission under government is not wrong. But, there has to be policy that will ensure that there is consistent and reliable investment into the transmission network, just like the other sector that are supposed to attract investment from private sector. Unfortunately, this is not happening. And we need to do everything we can to ensure that whatever policy we are going to do, we should do the policy that will ginger private sector investment into distribution and generation, and also government investment into transmission. I remember when I came in as MD Transmission Company of Nigeria in 2017, we came up with the Transmission Rehabilitation Expansion Program, where we attracted $1.661 billion. Now, this kind of investment is supposed to be coming sustainably and also properly managed. Just like you said in the last discussion on CBN, say we create regulation and we don't follow through. This is exactly what happened in the power sector. We didn't implement the transmission reform or the power sector reform properly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's look at this other aspect. You've given examples of countries where transmission is 100% handled by their various governments.
Yes.
And in Nigeria, it seemed not to be working.
Yes.
Now, they say we can't continue to do the same thing and expect a different result. We have the Nigerian Airways. Nigerian government could not manage it. We have the shipping line, several things that we could not manage. Is it not time for us to now take another look at this? If GenCos was privatized, this one was privatized, and transmission is still handled by government and it's not efficient, shouldn't we look at it? Is it out of space to say we'll take us another look either to privatize transmission and see how effective it's going to be?
Well,
Yeah.
If you answer that, we need to take this quick commercial break. You'll still get the chance to answer that after this break. Don't go anywhere. We still have more for you on the program. So thank you for staying with FCT Brief. We'll continue our conversation on power sector reforms. And still with us is Dr. Usman Gur Mohammed. You would like to continue the question?
Thank you very much, Emodu. Yes, your suggestion has actually been made by several people. There are some people who are even talking about regional grid and regionalization of the grid and so forth. But as I told you, anywhere, any country where the public sector is not working efficiently, even the private sector will not work efficiently. If you look at the power sector, I mean, it's not only transmission that is failing. Even the one that is under the private sector, distribution, what investment has come into the distribution network? In fact, since the network was handed over to the private sector, no distribution company has built injection substation. So we are just connecting at 330, 415, direct connection, which make the grid unstable. So when you say the grid collapse, it's not only the function of transmission, it's a function of all the other parties that are connected to the grid. Because when you say the grid is actually is the transmission, distribution, and generation. Because whatever happened inside a generation company, inside generation, can also collapse the grid if you don't know. It's not only transmission. So what I'm saying is that even in PPP, you look at the risk, and look at who is better party to take the risk. As of today, the better party to take the risk of transmission is government. If you give it to private sector now, for example, it will be very difficult for the private sector to get right of way. Even government is finding it difficult to get right of way, talk less of private sector. So once Nigerians know that this transmission line is owned by a private sector, the cost of right of way is going to be very massive and it will be very difficult to implement. Yet, government can actually work with private sector to expand transmission network, still under government, like it happened in other places. For example, when I was MD, we actually earmarked certain area that we are going to do PPP. And that is from Omotosho to Benin. We discovered that the significant generation that are taking place around Benin, the current corridor that we have, including the new one that is under construction, I'm talking of Benin North to Oshobo, is not enough to carry the mantle of power to the point of consumption, which we believe Lagos. So we came up with a plan to do a PPP between Omotosho and Benin North, because we cannot go inside Benin City because it's already built up place. So the intention was that we are going to clear the right of way, because if you allow private sector to do the right of way, they can't do it. We're going to clear the right of way. And then we are going to look at incentive that we're going to put to make a private sector agree to build the line and recover its money in 10 years. You meter them, you can recover the money from the transmission charge. So you tell us, so this is the kind of model that can work. But if you say you're going to sell transmission, it's not going to work. Because once we give it to private sector, they will not get right of way. As MD Transmission, I remember there are several distribution companies. They couldn't get right of way. I have to go and get the right of way for them. I mean, get where they can build the injection substation and distribution line. But, you know, transmission, for 330, you need to have 25 meters this way, 25 meters this way. it will be very, very difficult for a private sector.
Well, I like the fact that you introduced the idea of the PPP, because some people would say that enforcement in the electricity market seems weak. Contracts aren't being honored and debts pile up, with 2.7 trillion owed to gas suppliers. Is this a lax in regulation fueling this kind of crisis?
See, you see, as when I was speaking with Imodu before we came here, we actually discussed talking about transmission, and I told him that when you are discussing about the power sector, you cannot discuss on only one sector and then leave the other, because transmission can bankrupt distribution companies. Distribution company can bankrupt transmission. Transmission can bankrupt generation company. Distribution company can bankrupt generation company. So all the sectors have to work sustainably. It's not only one sector. All of them have to work sustainably. Let me give you an example. The main problem that we have, that the sector is having liquidity crisis that you are mentioning about. Where did it come from? It is because the distribution companies cannot collect the money, and that is why government have to come in. Either the tariff is too short, or they are not collecting enough. That is the reason why government have to come in to sustain the sector. And that is why I told you, after we have done the privatization and handed over most of the sector to the private sector, government is still the dominant investor in the power sector, because we didn't do things right. And one of the first things we didn't do right is that the regulatory framework is not consistent and is not reliable. The distribution companies that we brought, we handed over distribution companies to companies that are not capable. And we encourage Nigerian banks to give them money to buy the network. Eventually, if you look at it now, more than 80% of the original owners of distribution company have been kicked out by commercial banks. So the entry of the commercial bank into the power sector, especially Nigerian power sector, Nigerian commercial bank, they brought in money that are not ideal for this kind of network, because they are short-term money and are very expensive. What do you need for, like for example, if you are building a house and you go to a commercial bank now and you collect the money and you build a house and you say you're going to pay the loan from the proceeds of rent that you are getting. Will you be able to do that? You are going to lose the house, because there is a mismatch between the loan proceed and the investment you did. So investment in power sector is supposed to be long-term investment. Unfortunately, we handed over our distribution company to weak local companies that cannot bring in long-term investment. So this is the kind of problem we have.
Is that not an indictment on the system? And going forward, do we still keep those companies that are not competent, or we should work our way backwards and start a new process of reform?
Unfortunately, most of those companies that were original owners of distribution companies, and anyway, most of them are actually linked to policymakers in government. That is the truth. But most of them have actually been kicked out by the banks. So what do we do to move forward? When I was MD Transmission Company of Nigeria, I made suggestion to government. If you make mistake, you have to agree that you made mistake. You can't say you make mistake and you want to continue doing things as if nothing has happened. So that time we actually, because whatever investment that we attracted in transmission, which I also want to confirm to you, since we left, the investment we attract in transmission have been mismanaged. Some of them, there are certain things we are supposed to do, because the loan were on what we call programmatic approach, meaning you have to do certain things to attract the loan. Our people failed to do it, and some of those loans have gone. We cannot get it. And some of them that we got also has been mismanaged. We cannot even realize what we are going to get there. But what we knew we have a target where we are going to. What did we do? We also simulated the investment requirement of the distribution. Because if the distribution doesn't work, there's a problem. I want to tell you, Imodu, if you look at generation properly incentivized. The biggest problem with generation is the failure of the sector to pay. You understand? if you look at Geregu, which is the most transparent generation company, because it's quoted on the stock exchange, it's the only one. So a company is quoted on the stock exchange, you know it's transparent, you can see everything. I don't know making profit with a capacity utilization of less than 50%. So it means generation is properly incentivized. Now, what we did, after we came up with the study, we forwarded to NAC that shows we need investment of about 4 billion to fix the distribution. NAC said they don't agree with us. As the MD transmission, I said, okay, go ahead, give us somebody who will confirm. We are going to pay. They hire a consultant and TCN paid, and the consultant confirmed what we said. In fact, they added 1 billion on top of what we proposed, because we stopped at 11 kV. They extend to 415. I mean the new consultant, and they added 1 billion. We wrote to government and said, look, since we have made a mistake, government still owns 40% stake of the distribution. Government should invest 40% into the distribution network, borrow money and invest 40%. And we have been borrowing money actually. Those money we have been sinking in even adolescent children. We borrow from World Bank. We borrow so many money that doesn't make sense, even under rural electrification. I'm not saying rural electrification should not attract the kind of investment, but the main target should be the grid, because the grid is the only sustainable investment that can guarantee power. And so we wrote to government. Till date, nobody did anything on it, because I believe that if we had agreed to, we have borrowed 40% and put 40% investment to fix those identified shortcomings that we saw, and we fix it, it will be very easy for the distribution owners to be able to raise the 60% in the same form, not through Nigerian Commercial Bank expensive money, in the form. Some of them that may not be able to do it, what will happen? They have to sell their stake. And that is the way reform works. But what happened? Nobody agreed. Then we continue the same way we have been doing. We continue to invest in the embed. All the money we are paying in embed, through embed, it's like somebody who is sick and he has been investing money to manage the symptom. He didn't attack the real disease that is causing the problem, because the real disease is sustainable investment into the network.
Well, still closely tied to these concerns that you've raised, vandalism of the transmission towers and lines has become relentless and plunging communities into darkness and draining the economy. Is there a coherent strategy that you would suggest that will end this kind of crisis?
When I was there, vandalism was not a serious problem. There are a few cases where we had vandalism, but we managed it. Until recently, there was a significant level of vandalism. And the vandalism is part of our increase in security crisis in Nigeria. It's not only transmission. I believe that there are several other infrastructures that have been vandalized under the regime of insecurity. So we have to see how we will manage our insecurity. Secondly, the best way to manage vandalism is also to ensure that we collaborate with all Nigerian stakeholders. We have to have a whole country approach. When we had problem of vandalism somewhere around Suleja, we mobilized everybody, including the Emir of Suleja. He was on board. And eventually we were able to catch the people who are doing this thing, and we were able to stop it. So we have to have a whole society approach. But the reality of the matter is that our transmission will continue to be weak. We will continue to have a problem of power, except we have sustainable investment. And there are certain areas we need to look. We have to also look at our policy on right-of-way. The way it is today is very difficult to get the right-of-way. I will tell you, South Africa did about 4,000 kilometers of transmission line in the last 4 years. Nigeria, we did 0. South Africa had about 48 gigawatt. 48 gigawatt. We have only 4 gigawatt in the last 4 years. So who is supposed to be serious about extending network? We. But have we extended it? No. So we cannot politicize power sector. Power sector, we are supposed to treat it the way Iran treat their nuclear something. The way other countries face their critical problem. It's supposed to be we are supposed to have a non-partisan approach to the power sector, so that whichever government comes, things will not change. We should have a non-partisan approach to fix the power sector. Okay. And we have to be serious. Thank you.
Okay, there's the global talk about energy transition. And earlier on, you said the grid is the most sustainable way, not this the renewed energy. But I'd like you to look at it. Some people are saying, look, energy transition is the future. We have this need for huge investment in on-grid. How do we manage both so that at the end of the day we conform to the global push and also we meet our own local demands?
Thank you very much. I love when people are talking about energy transition, especially talking about the Kyoto Protocol or whatever, the climate change. And when we are talking as if we are in France or in the US. We have significant shortage and lack of electricity. And we seem to be adopting the same policy that UK, US, all those places that have electricity are adopting. For example, why should we adopt a policy of saying we want to merge the clean energy and the fossil energy at this time, the way France is saying that they want to reduce fossil energy and increase their clean energy? We shouldn't do like that, because we don't have electricity. So, as a nation, at this time, I think our policy on climate change or clean energy is not supposed to be that form. What we are supposed to do is to come up, carry out a study to show the quantity of all these FSU generator or our pass my neighbor generator that we have all over the place that are putting into the atmosphere. Have we carried out a study to determine the quantity of emission we are putting? Wouldn't our policy be in such a way that once we expand our grid and remove those generators scattered all over the place, including all inside industries, what impact are we doing on the climate change? So we are supposed to carry out a study to show the quantity of emission. And as we are expanding our grid, whether we are using gas or we are using hydro, what quantity of this reduction in atmosphere, including cutting of trees that we are doing because there is no electricity. Because people are using wood to heat their houses when the need arises. So this is the way we are supposed to do our policy. Me, I don't agree the current policy that we are doing, where we are emulating developed country, is the right way to do. Our policy should be, how do we reduce dependence on captive generation, scattered generation in people's houses all over the place? How do we reduce it? And as we are reducing it, what reduction of emission we are doing? But we are not doing like that. So I don't even agree the way we are approaching our energy transition. I don't agree. And I can tell you, most of those solar something that we are putting, they are not even sustainable. If you remember on this Abuja, this around the military barrack, about less than 10 years ago, it was powered by solar. Go there now. Are they there? You can't see them. So they are not sustainable. Well, the only sustainable way of fixing, of doing solar homes and solar generation is you have to generate it and put it on the grid. Unfortunately, you cannot even generate solar and put it on the grid now because the grid is unstable. You have to stabilize it first.
I agree with you. More still needs to be done in terms of reforms in the energy sector. But we will leave this conversation right here today and we'll continue some other time. I must say thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to come here. Thank you very much. And thank you, viewers.
We're happy to have you. That's our conversation today. We're glad you could be a part of it. We'll now hand you over to Lagos, where Ria and Ibrahim are standing by to continue with the rest of the show.